before she said bear, this voice came into my head, okay? And it wasn't like, it felt like there was somebody had put a speaker in my head, and it was a voice external, and the voice was really angry, and it says, if you don't leave now, you're gonna die. And like, back then, I thought it was just my own imagination, but it wasn't the same as like trying to imagine. It was like an external voice. The fear I felt back when it first happened, I never felt fear like that before. It was crazy.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. A little while back I made a video about a couple who happened to stumble upon what they believe to be a Bigfoot nest. They came across this Bigfoot nest and then they had an intense visual encounter with the creature right after. In this video I created, I also talked about a second encounter that happened in the same area where they encountered another Bigfoot creature. If you want to go check that video out later, it's episode 204 here on the channel. Anyways, recently the individual who had this encounter reached out to me because in the report that I found online detailing that encounter, the location and the time were actually wrong. So he wanted to get the encounter out there in a more accurate way. We ended up chatting on the phone, and he went into detail on these two incredible encounters in a way that my previous video couldn't. He also told me of a very recent third encounter he had earlier this year. Now, these Bigfoot encounters all happened on Vancouver Island, one of the world's major Bigfoot hotspots, and with the first two encounters, there were multiple witnesses to verify what went on. I highly recommend listening through to the end of this video to get all of the details. It's a very crazy, intense encounter, and you can hear in the audio of our phone conversation that he's still quite shaken up over all this, and that it's not easy for him to talk about. This is one of my all-time favorite Bigfoot reports, and it really is one that gives me the creeps whenever I think about it. Anyways, let's get into the interview.
I'll tell you when it happened. Okay, like, didn't really believe in Sasquatch, okay, myself.
Yeah.
But I like hiking, and this was me, my ex-wife, wife at the time, and our little daughter, who was 4 years old at the time. We lived in Nanaimo. And there's a beautiful waterfall, you could look it up on YouTube, called the Ammonite Falls. And this is where it happened.
Okay.
But remember, it was the first week in December. Well, I'll tell you what happened. The first week in December 2002. So this is before social media. It's before MySpace. It's before YouTube. It's before Facebook. So there was really no social media except email, right? And back then, the Ammonite Falls were kept kind of like a secret in Nanaimo. Like, very few people knew about them. They're located on the side of Mount Benson. It's Mount Benson Creek, which runs into Brannon Lake. And anyway, I'd moved to the island like back in early '93.
Yeah.
My first ex-wife got divorced anyway. Here now is her mom. So I've been to these waterfalls a number of times. It was one of my favorite hikes because hardly anybody knew about it. A lot of times I go down there, I wouldn't see anybody. Sometimes I run into the very avid hiker that knew about it. It was kind of kept a secret. So man, this brings back a lot of chills. But anyway, first week in December 2002, beautiful day. I said to my wife at the time, I'm going to go check out the Ammonite Falls. They're probably just raging after all this rain. Now, she had never seen them. So she said, make sure you bring the digital camera. That's when everybody was buying those things. And so I drive there. And from where you park your car, so there's like Biggs Road and Dumont Road, and now they join together. You hike in for about 15 minutes on fairly level ground, and you get to the ravine, and you got to find a little path where you got to use ropes to get down. And once you get down, you get close to Mount Benson Creek, and this is where it happened on. And so I got down there as usual. I usually carry a hunting knife, sometimes some bear mace, but I was never afraid of bears or cougars. Anyway. Oh boy. Anyway, I go hiking, and there's this big S-curve on Mount Benson Creek. A few blocks, I'm going to use the term blocks because in feet or yards, I don't know how much, but a few blocks away from the Ammonite Falls. and you're up high on this S curve, and it sort of goes down. And when I was hiking, all of a sudden, there's a big giant tree about the size of a telephone pole across the main path. And in the summertime, it was standing up because I was there in the summertime. But something built a weird looking structure around it. Like there was big boughs on either side, and there was like rotten wood and moss packed in. Sort of like when you chink a cabin. Mm-hmm. And it was right across the path. It was about 4 feet off the ground. Like the main structure is this big tree, and the end of it was in the creek, and the other part was on the land. So what happened is I climbed on it, and I didn't sense anything whatsoever. I didn't sense anything whatsoever, but there was this weird structure, and I couldn't figure it out because it was about the size of a good-sized living room, but over top of it was all these fresh cedar branches, broken. But the weird thing is they were woven together in a really intricate weave, like when people do basket weaving or something. Mm-hmm. Like over top of the whole thing, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell was this? Did an animal make this, or did the humans make it, or maybe a little bit of both? I didn't really know, but I just thought it was kind of weird, so I climbed on it, kind of bounced on it, didn't sense anything, climbed over it, went to the waterfall up ahead, forgot the camera, stayed there half an hour, came back, climbed over the structure again, and went home, and I told my wife there about how beautiful the waterfall was. And then she says to me, well, on the next nice day, we'll find a babysitter, you got to take me to these waterfalls. So, okay. Now, that was Saturday, first week in December 2002. The next day, it just pissed down rain all week long. And lo and behold, second week in December, shiny blue sky. So this time we found a babysitter for our 4-year-old. And I took my wife down there. Now, I've hiked with my ex-wife before, but, and she was never freaked out like this. But when we got out of the vehicle from where you park and started hitting in the bush, she started getting all freaked out, like, are you sure there isn't any wild animals out here? I feel like something's watching us. And you can kind of feel this weird pressure sensation, this weird, sort of makes your hair stand up. Yep. And I'm trying to reassure her, saying, well, this time of year, the bears are kind of hibernating. Actually, we're island on the West Coast. And we carried on. She kept on whining and wanting to turn back. We get to the ropes, and as we descended down the ropes, this feeling started getting stronger. And I said to myself, well, maybe we're being stalked by a cougar. Now, I had bear mace, and I had my big 9-inch blade, so I'm kind of looking around, didn't hear anything. So we get down to the bottom of the ropes, and we get on the path that goes along Mount Benson Creek, and you're high up on one side of the creek, like about a 60-foot drop down. Yeah. And we noticed as we got to this big S-curve that there's a lot of weird, which now I know what they are now, they were twist-offs, like fresh twist-off, about anywhere from 6 to 8 feet high. Yeah. But I didn't know that because I wasn't really into Sasquatch. So we started going down the S-curve, and all of a sudden we get to the bottom of it, and there's a structure just like a little ways away, and my ex-wife starts freaking out. She yells, something ain't right here. What is that? She's pointing at the structure. And me, I said, don't worry about it. I says, I was here last week, remember? Come on, it's okay, come on. So I coaxed her to follow me, and I remember her, like I climbed up on the structure, and I'm standing on this big tree the size of a telephone pole, and she's standing on the structure on the edge of it, looking scared. And I'll never forget this to this day. She's standing there, I say to her, see, there's nothing wrong. That's what I said. As soon as I said that, bang, 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 3 powerful bangs. This big tree I'm standing on is just vibrating. Wow. And, but my mind is thinking earthquake, because we live in an earthquake zone. So right. I said to her, what the hell, are we having an earthquake? And right after I said those words again, bang, 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 and everything's shaking, like this big log I'm standing on. And I'm still thinking earthquake. I'm looking up in the canyon walls because I thought maybe some boulders had loosened and hit the end of the log, but it was nothing. And then there was the third set of bangs, which were the most powerful. That's when we both realized the only thing shaking is the structure we're on.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, like what you said in the video, I could see it like it was, the whole thing was pulsating and it was pushing her up, even though she was on the edge of it. And we didn't know what. At this point, we realized there's something underneath us.
Mm-hmm.
So your mind kind of rationalized, okay, maybe it's a big bear. Okay, it's got to be a bear. By this time, we were frozen in fear. My legs were like jelly, hers too, and we're shaking. And when she said bear, that got our legs moving. And we ran off the structure. We had to run up the embankment on the path up to the top of the S-curve. And I remember she's having the dry heaves, like she's shaking, throwing up, but nothing's coming out. So I'm pushing her by the rear end because myself, like, if something's going to get us, it's going to be me because I'm behind, you know?
Right.
So we get to the top of the S-curve. We stopped to catch our breath. And I figured this is a good time for me to look behind me to see if we're being chased by some really big bear. As soon as I turned around, there was nothing behind me. I followed the trail. You could see it because you're up high.
Yeah.
Right down to the structure, and what I saw was not a bear. That's what freaked me out the most. It was like all black, had big shoulders. It didn't have a bear head. It had like this ape head, and it was crouched down though with its arms on the ground. You could see big, hairy, long arms. I like ape arms.
Wow.
And this damn thing is looking at me. And all I said, holy shit, we gotta go now. My wife didn't see what I saw. So on top of the S-curve, we have to run through this rabbit trail for probably about a block, 2 blocks long.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, it forks, eh? One fork goes back to the ropes, the other fork goes down back into the creek. Well, I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that fork, eh?
Yeah.
So I'm busy looking straight ahead, watching for the fork. Now, my wife, she's in front of me and she's running. And 3 times on that rabbit trail, she stopped, like bent over to catch her breath.
Yeah.
She had her hands on her knees, and then she'd look to the side with also a scared look would go on her face, and she'd just take off running ahead of me, just like you wouldn't believe. And she did that 3 times. And all of a sudden, we got to the fork, and we got to there was a big log before the ropes. As soon as we got there, this weird feeling that we were both feeling just left us. We were still real scared, but it just left us, man.
Yeah.
And like we climbed up the ropes, and it took us 50 minutes from where our car was parked to get down to that point. I swear it took us 15, 20 minutes to get back up there. And I remember like we were trying to convince ourselves it was a bear, and we phoned a conservation officer to report, a dangerous bear dead. He just kind of laughed at us because he said bears don't make structures like that. And bears, this is Vancouver Island, so bears all over the place.
Yeah.
But that's what happened there, that's what happened in that account there, that encounter.
Wow, it sounds like it was like emitting.
I had post-traumatic stress after that. I couldn't even go in the bush for a year. I'd shake, eh?
Really?
Like that's how bad it was. But yeah, I just wanted to fill you in on that encounter because man, that's what made me a believer. Throughout the years, I found big tracks, which I never casted by. I took pictures of them, put my foot next to them, and posted them on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like tracks on Highway 4 going up to Tofino and stuff. And even by Cathedral Grove, that was an interesting one too. It was August 2014, I think it was August 1st or 2nd. And it was really hot. Cathedral Grove was just packed with the tourists.
Yeah.
And the water levels in the creek were really low.
Okay.
So I said to myself, I'm going to hike up, it's called the Cameron West Creek. I'm going to hike up, that's right next to Cathedral Grove. I'm going to hike up as far as I could go, see how far I could get. So I'm way up there. I must have been a few kilometers where like there's no human tracks, no animal tracks. All of a sudden, from the creek bed, like where it went down, there's like gravel, then there's the embankment, then there's the creek, eh?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of that, there's this big, giant Sasquatch track. It must have been 24 inches.
Really?
And the toe parts were still kind of wet, but I didn't sense anything. And I took a picture of it and I posted it on Facebook saying, well, what do you think? And I continued to hike a little further, and all of a sudden something stopped me saying, wait a minute, nobody knows you're out here. So I chickened out and went back.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
So that encounter, like with the nest, that kind of turned you into an amateur investigator, eh?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't actively, like I said, I had post-traumatic stress. I had a hard time I couldn't even get out, like, if on a logging road. I was even afraid to get out of the vehicle,
Wow.
you know. So when we moved to Port Alberni, I started slowly forcing myself just to hike on the little hiking trail just on the outskirts of Port Alberni.
Yeah.
And now I'm okay. I could go way out in the wilderness there behind Sprout Lake and all that, go hiking by myself. But as soon as, if I get that weird feeling that I felt, you know, I'll never forget that. If I get that weird sensation,
yeah,
I just stop right there and I turn around and head back.
Right. Do you think it was like projecting something to you, like to make you feel that, or you're just sensing it?
It's a physical thing. I mean, like, I've read about 4 or 5 books on the subject after my first encounter there. And, you know, I know the experts, they theorize that it's infrasound.
Right.
Yeah, because infrasound can it has the ability to vibrate soft tissue, can make your hair stand up and make you disoriented.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I know other big animals, they use it.
And it might explain your wife, like, getting ill.
Yeah, I mean, and even the effect of infrasound could make you, like, throw up and make you wet your pants or even poo. You know, like, it does all kinds of weird things to your body because, you know, it has the ability to vibrate soft tissue, even disrupt your cells even.
Right. Did you get a good look at the face, like the facial features?
I just, like I was a ways away, like it was down by the nest. I was probably about 200 meters away from it, maybe a little up on top of if you see me in embankment, you'd understand.
Right.
Okay, so I couldn't get, but it wasn't a bear. You know, it didn't have a bear head. I've seen a lot of bears. I've been right up close to bears, and I've seen them stand up, walk around.
Yeah.
So I know what a bear looks like. This wasn't no bear.
Wow.
You know, it was looked like a big ape. So far, and this may sound kind of silly, but I've had 2 other encounters of seeing them on this island.
Yeah.
One was 3 years later after that first incident, 2005, after we ended up at Port Alberni. My ex-wife, she wanted to go back to check it out. I don't know why she wasn't as afraid of as I was. Maybe the infrasound hit me harder or something. I don't know. I didn't want to go back. I just had a bad feeling.
Yeah.
And so she coaxed me. She says, "Well, how about a group of us?" So there was 5 of us. So a friend of mine and I'm only met, but we didn't tell them why we were going down there, just for hiking. And then we ran into, as we're hiking, before we got to the ravine where the ropes are, the school teacher and his wife joined us. They were looking for the amateur falls, and I said, "Yeah, I know where they are. You know, safety in numbers."
Yeah.
But I still had a really bad feeling. And as we were hiking down, we got to the creek, and you know, we got to the nest site. Now the big tree is still there to this day, the one I was standing on. But back in 2005, there was everything was dismantled. Okay, but you could see this big impression underneath the tree, like as if you could lay underneath it, eh?
Yeah.
And they wanted to my friend poke around. I said, no, we'll keep on going. So we went to the waterfall, but on the way to the waterfall, which is about 2 or 3 blocks away, something kept throwing rocks in the creek behind us. And that was kind of freaking me out. Anyway, we got to the waterfall, and this time, this was in October. So it was just the beginning of the rainy season. And we got to the waterfall, and we crossed over, and there's ropes on the other side of the waterfall, and I didn't want to go back the way we came because of the splashing behind us.
Yeah.
Straight out. So we climbed up the ropes, and you could do this big giant loop around back to Mount Benson Creek and cross over a big log. You know, I was the only one who knew the way, but as we were going on the loop, started hearing these weird noises in the bush.
Yeah.
It sounded almost like a monkey or whatever, making weird noises, and you hear crunching in the bush, twigs or logs. And I remember the school teacher and his wife, they were from, I don't even know their names, but they were from Ladysmith. He says, what is that? He was getting scared. Eh?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, maybe it's a bird of some kind, like, a crow or whatever.
Yeah.
Just, they didn't want to tell him I will do it. But anyway, we went hiking. We got close to a gravel pit. And we didn't go in the gravel pit, but the trail went beside it. I was heading back where it's a creek, and then there was this thick salal bush. From the thick salal bush, the trail, it was so thick that, you couldn't see through the bush. Whoops. But there was that really creepy feeling again.
Yeah.
And I remember when we got there, the school teacher's wife, she was a big tall blonde, said, "Is this the way out?" I said, "Yeah," and she just went running. I was kind of like, wait a minute, you don't really, and she went running in there, and about maybe, I'm going to say 30 seconds to a minute, she comes running back out, and her face was just white as a ghost. And I said, "Oh, what's wrong?" "I heard voices in there, and they said to come back this way." Well, I don't know. That's what she said anyway.
Yeah.
So she kept behind me, and I decided, I know the way out. So I had my hatchet and my knife. I thought, if someone's going to die, it's going to be me, but I got to get these people out of here, because I was scared too.
Yeah.
And then we got out of the salal bushes, like getting to the embankment to go back across the creek. Oh, man, anyway, on my side view, you could call it peripheral vision, all of a sudden, I see, like, just a little ways, I'm going to say 100 meters or more, a little over 100 meters, there was these, like, smaller trees and bushes, and there was this little clearing. All of a sudden, I see this thing jump in between the clearing from these bushes to the next bushes. But this thing wasn't black. It was tall and skinny. It was, I'm going to you may laugh at this, but it looked kind of like Chewbacca. Okay?
Yeah.
It was like tall and kind of reddish brown.
Yeah.
But the freaky part is, like, at first, like, am I seeing things? But it hit the ground, and the ground shook, okay? And it was leaping. And every time it, like, I was out of sight, but every time it leaped, I'm just going to estimate 20 to 25 feet between leaps. Every time it hit the ground would shake, the trees would shake.
Really?
I just remember crash, 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 and it was as if it was trying to cut us off.
Yeah.
And then there's the embankment, and it stopped right below the embankment by the trail. And here I am, like, I know that if I just walk over 10 feet and look over, it'll be right there. But I was too scared. I didn't want to.
Oh,
I just said to
man.
everybody, hurry up, on the trail to get down. And they went past me. We found the big tree to cross over the creek, and they went back up. But behind me, it was making a really low moaning sound, like really deep moaning.
Yeah.
My ex-wife turns up. She was ahead of me. She says, "Are you doing that noise? Are you making that noise?" Not me.
Yeah.
But that was the second time. That was in 2005. Same
okay.
area, Ammonite Falls.
I wonder if it was the exact same creature.
I don't know. The first one I saw was black.
Oh, okay. Right.
This one was like a reddish brown.
Wow.
Anyway, like, you wouldn't be able to find one there now because everybody and their dog knows about the Ammonite Falls. It's now called Mount Benson Regional Park, and if you go down there, there's like more than 50 people and their
Right.
dog. So now, like I said, that was 2005. My last encounter, I'm going to tell you about, happened this year.
Really?
Do you know where Virgin Falls is on the island?
No, I don't think so.
Do you know where Kennedy Lake is? That's that big lake before you get to Tofino.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
That
where
big
they were doing
giant
all that
lake.
construction?
That's Kennedy Lake, and then you get to the junction where you can
Yeah.
go left to Ucluelet or right to Tofino. Well,
Yeah.
before the information center, the junction, there's two creeks that run underneath. They're called Lost Shoe Creek 1 and a Lost Shoe Creek 2. They're about maybe half a kilometer apart or something.
Yeah.
I guess somebody lost their shoes in there. I don't know. Anyway, in between those two creeks, there's a logging road. on the right-hand side when you're heading towards Tofino on Highway 4.
Yeah.
There's a telephone pole with this pink ribbon wrapped around it, like an old purpley pink ribbon wrapped around it for, about a meter.
Yeah.
Anyway, that logging road, it goes for 42 kilometers to Virgin Falls. It goes behind the other side of Kennedy Lake. That's where I think there's First Bridge and Second Bridge. There's Redneck Beach and there's Rainbow Beach. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
The hippie beach and the redneck beach. But anyway, you go past those areas, and I wasn't looking for Sasquatch. Just what happened is a friend of mine had posted these beautiful pictures of Virgin Falls. They're like 350 feet high. It's best to go in the springtime because then they're just raging. Eh?
Yeah.
So, I head down there, with my Jeep Cherokee, and I get to the waterfall, took pictures of it, some video, stayed there for about 45 minutes to an hour. And after, seeing everything, I decided, I guess I better head back to Port Alberni. So there was another couple there in their vehicle. Anyway, I left, and about maybe a kilometer away from where you parked, like back on the logging road.
Yeah.
And this is in May, probably toward the end of May of this year. It was beautiful and sunny. You know how in the springtime the leaves are really bright green?
Yeah.
Like they're really bright green. So anyway, the leaves are all really on the bushes, really bright green. I'm driving on the logging road, and the road started to curve left. And as soon as I got around that curve, guess what I see? Not on the road, but it's on the side of the road, and there was those bright green bushes in front of it, like covering its body.
Yeah.
But what I see is this head about, I'm going to say about hard to tell when you're driving, probably about 7 or 8 feet above the ground, this head. And what made it stand out is that there's these bright green leaves behind it.
Yeah.
But the head was black. I'm talking as black as midnight. It's like a human head. You could see couldn't see its face. I couldn't see its face, but you could see like the tufts of hair.
Yeah.
And there's this black head, and I go, what the? And as soon as, I started coming towards, the head just walked in the bush. I slowed down, but I was too chicken to get out of my vehicle. And I'm looking and looking, so I drove up ahead, turned around, came back to that spot. I thought maybe it went, because there was a creek or, it went either which way, some way anyway.
Yeah.
And couldn't find it, but that was freaky. But it's funny, the head was so black you couldn't see any features.
Wow.
You could just see the shape of this furry head like a human.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bear, that's for sure. I've been on this island too long to know what bears look like.
Right.
But that was the third time, and that was it.
You're the luckiest man in the world of Bigfoot.
Oh my God. But, I don't particularly go looking for them because the fear I felt back when it first happened, I never felt fear like that before. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But the fear was unbelievable. But I tell you, when you face something like that, I'll tell you one more thing about that first encounter, which was really freaky. Okay?
Yeah.
Just before she said bear, no, I'm not schizophrenic or nothing. It's only ever happened once in my life, and it was at that point. Just before she said bear, this voice came into my head, okay?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it felt like there was somebody had put a speaker in my head, and it was a voice external, and the voice was really angry, and it says, if you don't leave now, you're going to die.
What?
Yeah, that's what it said. And back then, I thought it was just my own imagination.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the same as trying to imagine. It was like an external voice. And I kind of, pushed it off as, maybe it was just my imagination. Until a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I was listening to a podcast from Les Stroud, Survivor Man.
Yeah.
And he told of an incident. This is after he had his encounters up in Alaska and all that.
Yeah.
I guess he was in the Rocky Mountains on the U.S. side. And on the podcast, he being interviewed, and he said he knew that feeling, that I was telling you about. Yeah. you could sense them. Well, he was, they drop him off. He was for a week or whatever. He's hiking, and all of a sudden that weird feeling comes around. He says so, like really strong. But he said this time, usually when he gets that weird, he's doing his episodes, he just takes a different. He leaves that area, takes a different route. Okay.
Right.
Anyway, he says on the podcast, says this time I'm just gonna sit here and see what happens. So he said he sat down on a log and he waited about, strong feeling, I don't know how long. I forget on what he said at the podcast, but anyway, he did say all of a sudden, he said this voice came into his head. This voice came to his head and said to him, if you really want to see us, we're just over the next 2 hills.
Oh.
And he said in his mind, he says he freaked out. He says, I can't do this. He went the other direction. And when I heard that podcast, I was like, holy, is that what happened to me?
Wow. So it does sound like a voice, like another voice from...
Yeah.
Because I've always wondered what that sounds like.
Almost like telepathy or something, I guess. I've never experienced that, but that's the only way I can put it. Like this voice in your head, but it's not your voice, or it's not you trying to imagine a voice. It's the voice you can't. It just like comes into your head. On the video that you have, you mentioned I'm gonna say my ex-wife seeing silver blinking eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Says by my right leg. Well, actually, she told me about that afterwards. She says because I was climbing up on it. My back was facing her, so there was a little hole there. And after I passed that hole, that's where my right leg would be. And she says she thought she was my wife was on medication. She said I thought I was hallucinating. She thought she saw these silver blinking eyes in the hole there. But yeah. Wow. I mean, the details that you put in there were that's what really surprised me. Is man, these details are exactly, there's a few things missing, but exactly what happened to us.
Yeah.